This is an ad.
I hate ads!
An ad for crisp, refreshing Angry Orchard hard cider.
That is refreshing.
An ad that interrupted your podcast.
I hate being interrupted!
To remind you to stop being angry at me and crack open an Angry Orchard.
That's a good idea.
Don't get angry. Get Orchard. Angry Orchard Cider Company, LLC. AngryOrchard.com. Please drink responsibly. Angry Orchard is a hard cider with other natural flavors.
Comcast is committed to bringing access to the internet to all Americans, including rural communities across the country, like Sussex County, Delaware.
We were being left behind. Everybody around us seemed to have internet, but we did not. High-speed internet is one of those good things that we needed to help us move our farming, our small businesses, our recreation forward.
Learn more about how we're bringing our next-generation network to more people across the country at ComcastCorporation.com/investment in America.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Hi, this is Tony Ruggiero here on the Tour Coach Podcast. This episode is a very special one. Most of you know a lot of teachers, aspiring golfers, golf nuts listen to this. Justin Parsons, Wayne Flint, Jackson Court, and myself, we do a monthly Zoom with up-and-coming coaches and teachers that are really, we're trying to mentor the next generation of teachers. And this past week, a couple days ago, we had the best guest of all. We had the GOAT. Numero uno, we had Butch Harmon. Justin Parsons was kind enough to reach out to his mentor who he worked for. Everybody that listens to the show knows what a big Butch fan I am. And Butch was so gracious with his time to come on and spend 45 minutes or actually an hour answering questions, talking instruction, the state of instruction, secrets to his success. It was just so cool to sit and be part of. I'm appreciative JP put that together. I played a very small role and I asked a couple questions, but JP asked some wonderful questions. We had some great questions from the teachers listening. So you're going to love this edition of the Tour Coach. JP, myself a little, you'll hear some Jackson Court in there with Butch Harmon. And this is, there's so much gold in there, so many great things. Can't tell you how fun this was to sit. I was glued to the computer watching this through the Zoom. And been fortunate enough to watch Butch a few times, and I mean the wisdom and the humor and all of it mixed together, and the passion for getting better was evident. Anyways, enjoy this edition of the Tour Coach. All right, so joining us here, Justin Parsons, Jackson, myself with Butch Harmon here on the Golf Coach Development Zoom call and the podcast. Butch, thanks again so much for taking the time to sit down with us. We got a great group of young teachers that are passionate about getting better. JP and I have been doing this, and Wayne Flint and Jackson, who's also part of it, but been doing this for a year and a half or so, and it's been fun. A lot of folks enjoy trying to get better at teaching, and we appreciate you taking the time. It's awesome to have you.
No, my pleasure. Happy to be here. As I always say, anything Wayne asks me to do or Justin asked me to do, I'm doing it. If JP says, will you do this? I say, heck yeah, I'll do this. He did everything I ever asked him to do. So if he asks me, I'm going to do it with it.
Well, let's kind of, JP, chime in whenever you want, but start there. The kind of where we started before we started recording, just about, you didn't get to be Butch Harmon by not working your ass off. And I'm sure there were times that things weren't great and that you didn't have tons of success. Kind of take us through where you started and how hard you had to work to get where you are.
Well, I mean, obviously you're right. At 80 years old, I've been doing this a long time, almost 60 years I've been a golf pro, and I've been on both ends of it. I've been at the high end and I've been at the very low end. And let me tell you, the high end's a lot more fun than the low end. That's for damn sure. But the low end I created myself back in the 80s when I was divorced and doing things I shouldn't have been doing, and I lost a job, and I was kind of lost in my life. And my brother Dick is the one who saved my life. He said, get in your car, drive down to Houston, and we'll find you a job. And I went to work for Dave Marr building golf courses for about 2 or 3 years. And I really actually enjoyed that. I've always been a workaholic, so that's what saved me through my down times. And I didn't even know how golf courses were built. So for me, it was a great understanding to learn, and I got pretty good at shaping and doing stuff like that. And then I just realized I missed being in the golf industry. I missed being around it. Started teaching again. I started a little golf school in Texas. And I kind of went on from there, And in the 80s, I got a break from Steve Elkington, which led me to Davis Love III, which led me to Greg Norman, which led me so on and so on and so forth, Tiger Woods and down the line. I never started out thinking I was going to be the number one teacher the last 22 years in golf. I just always tried to be the best I could be. Whatever that was, that's what I wanted to be. The one thing I will say to all of you young instructors that are out there listening to this, don't be a follower. Don't live in a small box. Think outside the box. Justin has known me a long time. I'm good at thinking outside the box. I'm not a follower. I like being a leader, and I like learning from everybody. At 80 years old, I'm still trying to learn. I'm still trying to get better, even though I don't teach as much as I used to. I still teach a lot, and I love what I do. I would never say that. I think my dad had the greatest line ever. It's what you learn after you think you know it all is the most important thing in life. And I've never gotten to that point where I think I know it all. I can keep on learning. That's the one thing I would tell all you young instructors. Don't put everything in one box. Don't be a follower because somebody who does it this way. So that's the way you do everything you do. Use your own imagination. Be creative. And don't be afraid to think outside the box. My gosh, I've been one of those that's been criticized numerous times for thinking different ways of doing things and stuff. And I learned from watching great teachers teach and great players play. And I learned by watching and seeing what they do and how they do it. I get asked all the time, what is your system? I said, my God, I don't have a system. How the hell? I'm not smart enough to have a system. I said, I just try and get the best out of what you do naturally. Whatever you do naturally is your natural swing. And it doesn't matter whether you're a beginner, a 15 handicap, a scratch, or a tour player. Your natural swing is your swing. I try and take the things in that swing will make it better. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel and completely change you. I just want to try and make you better. To do that, sometimes I have to think outside the box. Sometimes I have to do a radical thing with somebody or something that I saw somebody do once before and it worked in a situation like that. So you keep your eyes and ears open and just keep learning. That's the best thing you can do. And just be as good as you can be at your craft. Always try and get better. I always tell when I do seminars, I always tell these young teachers, the best thing I can tell you to do is pick out a guy that's had success, but you disagree with everything he says, and go to his seminar. And somebody said to me, why would I want to do that? I said, because you're going to learn something. When you leave that room, if you only learn one something you didn't know, guess what? You're better at doing your job. You may not agree with 90% of what the guy said, but that 10%, you really learned something that you didn't think about in the golf swing, or think about how to approach it, whether it be communication-wise, with video or whatever. And I said, that's how we get better. We get better by keeping our eyes and ears open.
But that's fantastic. You always said to us, and I think from those of us who had the privilege to work for you and the family, you always said, you guys need to beat me to work. You need to be leaving work after I've left work. You had a very much an expectation on the way that we would present ourselves. And I remember something else you said to me, especially with tour players and just being around players. You said, if you can show up, show up. Make sure you make effort to be where you need to be. And I think, that requires a certain amount of effort and dedication and, application and sacrifice. And sometimes you feel like you're wasting your time, but then, you get to a point where you recognize that all of those hours of dedication, end up coming back to you. And that doesn't maybe happen for a young teacher until he's maybe 40 or 45, or, I'm 47 now, and I've had a wee bit of success the last couple of years. But speak a little bit about that and about the way your dad would have asked you guys to behave when it came to the professional nature of the sport.
Well, we were raised by the best. I mean, Butch Harmon was the greatest club pro in the history of the game, the best teacher, the best player, best merchandiser. I mean, one of the first one to use logos. I mean, I could go on and on about my dad. And working for my father was not easy, especially being his son. So I was the low man on the totem pole. I got paid the least of anybody else. And I was required to show up and learn and get there and do. And one of the things I've admired about your success, JP, is you remind me a lot of me when I was younger. You were really willing to learn and to listen, and you did more listening and you asked more questions than you did giving advice to people. And the better you got at it, the better you got at it, the more confidence you have. And I've really admired the person you've become and the work you've done with your players. I don't think the average person realizes how difficult it is to work with tour players. Working with 18 handicaps is easy because you can experiment. If this doesn't work, we'll try something else. If this doesn't work, you're coming over the top. No shit. That's all you know how to do is come over the top and hit a weak slice. Let's see if I can make you hit a hook, or let's do something. If it doesn't work, we'll try something else. When you're working with a tour player, you're working with, number one, how he makes a living. That's the first thing. Number two, he sought you out to get your opinion on what he needs to do. Number three, you better be professional and you better be ready. The problem I see with a lot of coaches on the tour, and you're not this way, but they're afraid to say something to the guy. They're afraid to see. For me, as you well know, I got no filter. If I see something's wrong, I'm jumping my ass in there, and you're not paying me to kiss your ass. You're paying me to make you better. And so I have no problem jumping in there and tell you, this isn't right. We need to change this, or we need to change this now. And I see a lot of younger teachers are afraid they're going to lose their job, so they won't say that. And they won't get in there, and they become yes men. Well, these tour players have a zillion people every week kissing their butts. It's, how it's over the top, to be honest with you, compared to when I played back in the 60s and 70s. But you got to be 100% sure when you make a decision, this is what this person needs to do, because they have the talent to do anything. You can see guys that have been ruined by instructors. I would never say any name, and nobody is really going out there to try and ruin anybody, but it's happened. We've seen guys that have really disappeared because of bad instruction. And to me, that's a person that has a model. He has a one swing model, and he's going to put everybody in the same box. Well, I don't do that. I can't do that because everybody's got a different build, different what's inside of them, different capacity to learn, different desire to work hard, different ability to understand what you're saying. So for me, that's the way I've tried to do my job. I'm not here to kiss your butt. I'm here to try and make you better. And my good friend Todd Roberts teases me all the time, we don't have a system. He says, you have no system. How can you be any good? I said, yeah, I got a system. I said, you come to me, you pay me a lot of money, you get better, and you win. That's my system. And I said, it's worked pretty good for the last 50 years.
Classic.
Go ahead, JP.
But when you're talking about that, it's interesting. Watching Claude work with a few players at the golf school in Dubai, and being able to get over to Vegas and watch you. And when you think back to what you were doing, you said you got a bit of a break with Steve Elkington. I mean, you were around golf for a long time. You obviously watched a lot of great teachers teaching. I mean, at what point in your career did you feel really confident and ready to teach the best players in the world, or did that just kind of happen organically?
Well, even as a junior golfer, I used to like to think I could teach because I just tell people what my dad was telling somebody. But I like trying to help them stuff. I've always had that desire. Elkie was the first real tour player that I had any success with. He had worked with my brother Dick. He worked with my dad. And that's what led me to Greg Norman. But I had a lot of success with Davis Love before that. And I think the more success you have, if you keep an open mind, the more confidence you get in your own ability. You've known me a long time. I am a very confident person. I believe 100% in my ability to help you. And that may sound arrogant to a lot of you, and I'm not trying to sound arrogant. I'm just giving you the model that I use for me. I believe strongly in my ability to help people. I've never rested and say, I know it all now. That's why I keep changing. I mean, think about this. What we teach today is not the same thing we taught 10 years ago. Equipment changed that. Equipment made us have to open our eyes and realize. I mean, you look at all way back with wooden drivers, persimmon drivers in softball, and all the reverse C's we saw in people throwing the ball in the air. Well, that's how you had to get the ball in the air. New clubs came out, and you wanted to launch it as high as you can with as little amount of spin as you can with a driver to get your best distance. So you had to get on top of the ball more. So the staying behind the ball didn't work. We had to change our way of getting people through the ball, putting their chest on the ball, rotating through, extending past it. So I've evolved with the times, and as equipment changes, we've had to change. And you can't be afraid to change. I'll go back to what I said at the start. Think outside of the damn box. Don't stay in this little box. As you know, the saying that you've heard me say a million times, you've heard Claude say it, you've heard Wayne say it, the people that have been around me. You have two things you can do. You can teach golf to people or people to play golf. I choose to teach you how to play golf. I'm not trying to teach you X's and O's, how you look good on a driving range. I don't give a damn how if it works on a driving range. Now, you got to take it out of the course to work. And so we like to think, those of us, and you're a perfect example of that because you grew up working in a Harmon system, if there is such a thing, just being around enough Harmons, which I'm not sure is good for your brain every now and then, but it is what it is. But that's how we learn. That's what we think is more important to teach. I need to teach you how to play golf. I'm not running a driving range in Tokyo, Japan, with 1,000 people that never get on a golf course. So let's swing like a robot. I'm not smart enough to get anybody to do that. I just try and get people to play better.
Well, it's interesting, Butch. From my, like, back in Dubai towards the end, and the Golf Digest Middle East asked me to do a thing, and they said, "Look, could you give me an idea what Butch's system is?" And so of course I'm struggling at that point. I'm thinking to myself, well, what can I say? And I think, recalling it, I think I just went with great fundamentals. I talked a little bit about post impact because you used to talk about post impact a lot, the face being nice and stable and the body continuing to rotate, and not having a long kind of loose backswing. Although there have been players being successful with that, but to your point, there was never a point in the journey that I had with you and your family where somebody said, no, you must teach it like this. No. I think your father probably had more of an inkling into sequencing and biomechanics than anybody. And obviously Mr. Hogan had an incredible way with kind of being able to understand how his body was supposed to be working. And I remember, I think it was you telling me the story of your dad saying, like, if the downswing's a horse race, the horses kind of take off in this order and then they slow down in this order. And he was basically talking about, the beginnings of a kinematic sequence, which was, way ahead of his time. And, it was always delivered in such a simple way. But, what I always got from you guys, it was less about what you knew and less about the information that perhaps you had, but more about the way that you were able to communicate with people. And, I've even noticed recently you've talked a lot in your, some of the lessons, like I asked Ricky what he was doing and Harold what he was doing. And you've talked a lot about hip turn, and maybe in 2000 you weren't talking about hip turn as much. And that's, part of what you're saying about evolving as an instructor.
Well, I think for the backswing, a hip turn is a lost art because you remember Jim McLean's X Factor, where you don't try and turn your hips too much. You turn your shoulders as much as you can to create the tension that allows you to come. Well, look at what happened to Jason Day's back by swinging like that, because he hardly made any hip turn at all. And I think hip turn is a huge part of the golf swing. If you watch the old timers, the best players, they all made big hip turns, which my theory is you can't unwind something you don't wind up. So if you don't get it wound up, how the hell are you going to unwind it? Because we need to be able to unwind. The other thing, going back to my dad, for everybody that worked for my dad, all the great instructors that became great instructors that worked for him, was he wanted you to be your own person. He wanted you to be your own person. He wanted he would help you and teach you, but he wanted you to be you. In other words, people ask me, what's the most important thing in teaching? And the obvious answer is knowledge. The more knowledge you have, the better you are. No, it's not. It's communication skills. You could have all the knowledge in the world, but if you can't communicate it, then what the hell good are you? You got to be able to communicate the message to the student. That's our job. That's why I say, if someone, when you're working with a higher handicap, if they don't get it one way, hell, we just go to some other way. But when you're working with really good players, you can't do that. So your communication skills are very important. And Dad was so great, not just with me and my brothers, but with all his assistants. He wanted them to be themselves, but he wanted them to understand who themselves was going to be. You had to be a perfect gentleman at all time. Like you said, you had to show up early, leave late. I love today, modern day. You work at a golf course today, you're almost like a clerk. You're not really a thing because you can only work so many hours a week. And what the hell is that bullshit? We work the sun. When the sun's up, we work. When the sun goes down, we go home. That's how the golf business has always been. And nowadays, it's changed. And I think this thing that you guys do, where teachers can hear other teachers talk and explain, I think is really good for especially the younger generation, because they don't get that opportunity. They're so wrapped up in technology. That's all they do. I watch guys today give lessons, and the guy makes a swing. They've never looked at the swing. They've never watched the ball, and here they are with their computer. Well, you're 4 degrees from the inside, 3 degrees down and stuff. But why the hell don't you tell him why he's doing that? And how come you didn't watch him do it? I mean, the ball, JP, even when you learned, when you were young working, what was the name of that driving range you worked at? Claude told me about.
Blackwood, back in the.
And where was it?
In Bangor, just between Belfast and Hollywood.
There you go. So when you worked there, you didn't have any of that crap. You had the ball was your barometer. If you think about it, where the ball starts, the spin on the ball, the trajectory of the shot, the curvature and the speed the ball's traveling pretty much tells you everything. It tells you the path of the club coming down and the club face at impact. It tells you all that. That to me was the greatness of Claude Harmon and John Jacobs. And those are the two biggest influences of me in my teaching. John Jacobs was a genius, and my dad was a genius. And they made everything so simple. They didn't confuse you with a whole bunch. The problem today, people want to try and show you how much they know. Well, and the way we teach, less is more. The less you can say, the more they're going to get out of it. There's no doubt about that. You don't need to confuse someone with how much you know. They don't give a damn what you know. They're coming to you to help them. The ball will tell you if you're doing a good job or if you're not doing a good job. So there's a lot more things that go into it than the X's and O's. I'm not anti-technology. I get asked that all the time when I do seminars. Mr. Harmon, we hear you're old school. And I said, well, I'm old. Yeah, of course I'm old school. I said, but we use technology. I use launch monitors. I said, we use training aids and we use videos. I said, as a matter of fact, you'll like this one, JP. I said, I actually use 2 launch monitors when I teach. And they said, well, what kind are you using? I said, they're these blue things right here, these 2 things that are looking at the guy swinging. That's my launch monitor. I can see if the damn thing's spinning too much or not spinning enough. My God, I've only seen 1 million golf balls leave a club face in my lifetime. So don't get so wrapped up in technology. Technology is good. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's not the end all. JP, I don't know if you had the opportunity to meet my dad when he was alive.
Didn't.
Well, he was the biggest character of all time. And I had a guy ask me the other day, he said, Mr. Harmon, what would your father think of a launch monitor? I said, I couldn't have been lucky enough for them to be around when my dad was teaching, because I could just hear him, hey, pal, let me tell you anything. See that machine over there? Never hit a shot. It's never hit one. It just sits on its ass all day. It spits out numbers. Never hits a shot. How about on Sunday, on the back 9 on Sunday, and you're coming down the stretch and you got a chance to win? Does that machine know what's going through your veins and your body? Hell no. That machine's still sitting on his ass spitting out numbers. And that's exactly the way my dad would have explained it, because those guys had to dig it all out of the dirt. They had to watch. Most of them all grew up as caddies in a caddy yard, and that's how they learned how to play. And it's different times, but I'm not anti-technology. I think it's good. I just don't think it's the end all.
And I would say, Butch, even, and I'd be interested because I've never asked you this before, and I remember after you had a weekend at the Floridian, which I'm sure you were up later than you needed to be, and I drove. We drove to Orlando together from the Floridian. I just asked you questions for 4 hours. I'm sure you got out of the car and thought, I wish this fella would shut up. But I've noticed with the best players, they seem a little bit more observant with their ball flights, even just like naturally watching Louis hit balls and, Davis more recently hit balls. They're very, very observant about their ball flight, and they really, they seem attached to it in a way that, maybe I wouldn't have been. Would you have noticed that? Look at, remembering Greg and Tiger, like they're very in tune with what they're doing from a ball flight perspective.
Absolutely. Even before that, in the old days, because my mother had 10 pregnancies and there's 6 boys in our family, of which I'm the oldest. And so my dad would only play in the major championships every year. And I would always go to him starting when I was like 6 or 7 and 8 years old, 9 years. I mean, I've literally seen every great player hit a golf ball with my eyes, with the exception of maybe Sarazen and Bobby Jones. I mean, we can go all the way back to Hogan and Nelson and Snead and Demerit and all these guys. I was a kid, I watched every one of them. I used to caddy for my father. I started when I was about 13 or 14. I caddied for him every day. And that's how I learned a lot about ball flight, watching these great players. I'll tell you an interesting story about Ben Hogan. My dad was playing with Mr. Hogan, and we got to the 8th hole in the West Course at Wingfoot, which is now not a long hole, but in those days it was like 460 or 470. And he hit in the right rough, and he had to he didn't have a very good lie. And he took his forward and he made this swing where he picked it straight up and he just chopped down on the ball, and the ball leaped out of there towards the left bunker and just hung it right, hit short of the green, ran up to about 20 feet. And I'm thinking to myself, how the hell did he do that? And so what I would do when we were done with the working that day, my dad would teach in the evenings. I'd get my club boy and I took my little canvas bag and went back to that 8th hole and found that divot, threw about a dozen balls down there. And how do you do that? I saw him do this and I saw him do that. You know, in those days, what the average person doesn't know, there was no legality on grooves and woods. Well, how they used to take big chisels, chisel out those persimmon woods. I mean, you have to take the ball out of play every time you hit a fairway wood because the ball would squeeze on that face. So I learned a lot by watching these guys, and I learned a lot on how they control the ball. When you were a kid going to a tournament and you'd see this guy hit this low one and it would rise up like that, and the gallery would go, ooh, and the player hated it because it was all backspin. It wasn't going anywhere. Well, that was a softball and a wooden persimmon head. And so I learned watching these guys control the trajectory. I would say Ben Hogan's the greatest striker of a ball I've ever seen. Second to me, might surprise you, Lee Trevino. Why? Because they control their ball through the air. They control the ball through the air with ball flight better than anybody that did it. That's why Trevino was so successful. That's why Hogan was so successful. That's why Tiger became so successful. One of the barometers, you know, JP, what's that?
Larky always wanted to be on your list.
Oh, yeah, he's on there. He could control that ball in the air beautifully. And it's the one thing I've noticed about your players, the way they control the ball through the air. And if you think about it, the barometer I use most of the time at the end of the year when I look at stats, and gosh knows now you can get 20 pages of stats. The one that to me is the most important is proximity to the hole from every distance. Because if you're hitting your ball pin high every time, guess what? You're controlling your ball through the air. If your proximity to the hole is all over the place, you better work on that trajectory because the higher you hit it up here, the less chance you have of controlling it. And so that to me has always been one of the stats I look at. Fairways hit is a joke anymore because there's no rough and they hit it so far anyway that it doesn't make any difference. I wish that they played tournaments with 25-yard wide fairways and 6 inches rough. Should we find out who can play golf? You know, and nowadays, because of how fast the ball comes off of a driver for a tour player, I mean, my God, and it doesn't curve that much for them. They just swing as hard as they can. I don't know what's going to happen there. Something's going to happen. My good friend, and I've told Justin this before, Jose Maria Olazabal, he had the best idea. He said, let's go from 14 clubs to 9 clubs. We'll find out who can play. Because then if you got a putter, now you got 8 clubs that you can hit shots with. Well, you better be able to hit shots because you're going to be in between a whole bunch of times. And I think that would be a great idea. Hell, we're the only professional sports league in the world that plays under amateur rules. I mean, think about that. NFL football is not even the same size as the college football. The rules are different. Basketball, 3-point line, the key. Baseball, aluminum bats, wooden bats. We're antiquated here with these USGA people. I mean, all they're doing is running around wiping the dandruff off the doggone Blue Jackets. They make all the rules for us. That's bullshit. Let's make our own rules. Let's professional golf have their own rules. I just read something the other day that Adam Scott said down in Australia. He said, he talked about the ball, and he goes, the heck with the ball. He says, how about the driver? How about the size of the head of a driver? And how you can hit it all over the club face and still get a good shot. How about we make the driver head smaller? Don't let the ball come off the face so much. And we do our own rules. The length of the club can only be so long. And then let's just see if that works. Because right now they're making golf courses obsolete, to be honest with you. Because somebody's going to come along and win a tournament hitting it 400 yards. Because the long drivers are doing it already.
Hi, this is Tony Ruggiero. And look, recently, several teachers I know and several players have had some scares with skin cancer. In fact, I recently went and saw a dermatologist here in town, and I had a couple things frozen off, eyelid, my face, my earlobe, and not getting any younger. And I know it's getting to that time of the season where it's cooler, but look, being in the sun is a real deal, and I've not been very good, to be totally honest, my whole career at using it at all because I didn't like how greasy it was, how hard it was to get off your hands, how it clogged up my pores. And then I found this sunscreen, Visor Skincare. It's clear, it goes on, it doesn't dry you out, it isn't greasy, it's like you didn't put anything on. By far, it's the best sunscreen I've ever used. Without a doubt, it's the easiest to use. And we've got a discount code for all of you. All you have to do is go to visorskincare.com, is use our code word Dew Sweeper. VisorSkincare.com, code word Dew Sweeper.
And then I know, JP, and this is off the subject, but it's a pet peeve of mine. Ground force. Ground force. Boy, we heard that one the last couple of years. Isn't it funny how every 2 years or so there's a new term everybody goes? I had a guy ask me the other day, Mr. Harmon, what do you think of ground force? I said, ground force? I've been walking on the ground for 80 years. What the hell you think? I'm elevating when I'm hitting these goddamn shots? Of course I'm using the ground to move off of when I move into it. That's not, you act like ground force is new. What do you think we're walking on? We're walking on the ground. Of course we're using the ground. Watch Nicklaus when he first came out and how far he hit the ball, the way he could move off the ground when he moved into it. When he was Fat Jack with that big wide stance and way back, he was hitting it over 300 with a wooden driver and a softball. Norman, in my years that I started to work with him, wooden driver, softball, they could hit 300 yards. Yeah, they're using the ground. So that none of this stuff is new. The golf swing has been around a long time. I think teachers are getting better at teaching it, but still the players have gotten so much better. Look at the athletes we get now. Think about what, say my year, when I had my rookie year on the tour, 69, 5'8", 5'7", 5'8", 5'9", 5'10" was pretty tall. George Archer was 6'3" or 4". He was tall. Everybody else was under 6 feet. Well, hell, everybody's over 6 feet now. Yeah. The size of the athletes we're getting, they're bigger and stronger. They move the club head faster. There's no doubt about that. So something has to be done at the professional level, or it's not going to be any fun anymore. I mean, I like seeing a tournament. I don't agree with the USGA all the time that they use even par as a barometer. I like seeing a course set up hard but fair, where if you really play well and you put your ball in play and you putt good, you shoot a good score. The thing that killed me the most, and I'm going to be honest with you, is when Bryson DeChambeau won the U.S. Open in Winged Foot. I can't tell you how that pissed me off, because he was driving it all over the fucking place. He's hitting it in the rough, but he's gouging it out on the green. He's making every putt he looks at. Now, he wasn't the only guy under par. He was the only one that finished under par. But of all the great champions we've had at Winged Foot, we got DeChambeau. Come on. That one kind of did me in a little bit.
But the rough was weird that week. I was there with Harris, Brian, and Louis, and it was like, if you got it within about 125, you could just about get it to the front edge of the green rough. But if you're in that 150 to 175 range, you kind of no chance. So I think they just misjudged the rough and misjudged how far they could hit it into the rough.
Well, I mean, go back to what was the massacre of Winged Foot, 1974, when I think Watson, who won there? Irwin shot like 8 over or 9 over or something. And the headline of the book was the massacre at Winged Foot. Yeah, why? Because we had narrow fairways and rough, and it put a premium on hitting the ball in the fairway. Well, that premium is gone at the professional level. I mean, go back and look at some of your old Open Championship films and see how high that rough was off the side of the fairways. Or go back to U.S. Opens in the 40s and even into the 50s, and you got 6, 7, 8 inch rough. Well, these guys today, if they grew that today, you know what whiners and babies.
They'd go nuts.
They'd be complaining there, oh my God, the rough is so high, I can't get out of it. Well, you're not supposed to be in it, pal. Put the damn thing in the fairway. The argument to that is, well, if we did that, nobody would hit a driver. I said, well, where does it say you have to hit a driver? I think you're supposed to get from point A to point B to point C in the fewest amount of shots you can. Isn't that where golf is? To put a number in the scorecard, in the box. That's all it is. And I think we've gotten carried away with the distance thing. I mean, that's all we hear about. That's all you guys as instructors hear about. I want to hit the ball further. I want to hit the ball further. In my 10 years with Tiger Woods, everybody who came to my golf school said, I want to swing just like Tiger Woods. I'm like, no shit, so do I. But we'd have to climb in his body to do it. How about my line that I use for the average players, and JP knows this line because it's my dad's line. So look, I can't make a racehorse out of a mule, but I can damn sure make a racing mule, pal. So let's get the best out of what you can do. Forget about who you want to play like and how far you want to hit it. Let's just get the best I can get out of you. And in teaching, that's what our job is, to get the best out of our students we can. Everybody thinks about you, JP, and a lot of you guys who work with tour players like I have, that's all we do. No, I spend most of my time with the average player. So I see some of the weirdest swings you've ever seen. I mean,
well, I also think, Butch, when you work with average players, to your point, you get the opportunity to experiment a little bit, but I think you get the opportunity to be creative, and I think that that spills over into what you're doing with, with more elite level players. I mean, obviously the margins are an awful lot finer at the elite level, but you've got that opportunity to be creative with someone who's maybe less skillful, and you can, find things that create results. But I wanted to ask you one more thing, just kind of on some stuff that you and I and Claude used to tell me about. Claude used to talk a lot about the difference between a job and a career and a vocation. And he used to talk a lot about, if you want a job, working for the Harmon family is probably not the place for you to, unless you're the person who, maybe answers the phones. But if you want a job teaching people, it's probably not going to be a job. You're after a career. And within that career, there's a vocational aspect to it. I think for the younger teachers watching, speak a little bit about that, about the fact that, sun up to sunrise, and you've loved this all your life, and you've had great times with it, and you've had some tough times, but the difference between just having a job and having a career.
Well, I think the golf business has changed through the years. The pro like my father was, like Bob Ross was, like my brother Craig was, dedicated golf pro, good player, good teacher, good merchandiser, could give clinics, was great with his members. That's kind of changed these days. That's because the pros don't own anything anymore. The clubs own the shops or something like that. So that has changed. But teaching hasn't changed. And I like to tell people, when I used to teach a lot when I was at Lochinvar, and I'd probably teach 7-8 hours a day. And in the summertime, it's 90 degrees, 90% humidity. I mean, you're dying. And you got a 5 o'clock lesson, and you'd give the guy $500 not to take it, because all you want to do is go home. You have no desire to work with this guy, and he's the last one on your book. And you see, oh my God, I got Justin Parsons at 5 o'clock. He's a 15 handicap. Oh, son of a bitch. Oh, maybe he won't show or something. That's when you find out what a kind of teacher you are, because you have to be into it for that lesson just as much as you were for the one at 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the morning. Why? Because you're a professional. And you have to act like a professional, and you have to conduct yourself like a professional, which means you have to give 100% of your effort every time you walk on that lesson tee. People are paying you money to do this. They're taken away from their job coming to see you. So you need to treat that lesson as something that's very special. And we all get lessons with guys that, oh my God, this guy's so bad. I wish I didn't have him. And, now, in my with 5 or 6 assistant pros, you can imagine the ones I'm giving them to. This guy will call me and say, "Hey, John, Mr. So-and-so, he'd be perfect for you right now. Oh, what's his handicap? I think he's a 32. He's right up your alley. Don't worry about it." But in the old days, that's who we taught. But to be a true teaching professional, you have to love to do it. You have to strive to get better. Your whole goal has to get better at what you do. There's no joy better in teaching, and it could be a professor in college or high school, coach or teacher, to see your students improve. That's the greatest joy we get, to see a guy that's never broken 90 all of a sudden shot 83 one day. It makes you feel good. It makes you really feel good about what you're doing. People say to me, "So you've had guys win so many major championships." I said, "Yeah, I've been very lucky. I don't know, 20 or so majors, the guys that I've taught have won." I said, "But I get enjoyment out of a guy that never broke 90, and all of a sudden he's breaking 80. I said, "I get a great enjoyment out of that. Now, it doesn't pay as well, but I get enjoyment out of it." And that's why we teach, because we want to impart what we know to people and help them get better. The whole key is to help them get better. Not everybody, JP, works in a great facility like you work, or the facilities I've had around the world where I get a chance to work. But a lot of people don't get to do that. A lot of people are in small clubs somewhere and stuff. But still, a great instructor is a great instructor. I mean, it doesn't matter what his name is or what course he works at. If he's getting success, my brother Dick was the king of juniors, as you know. I mean, he was Mr. Junior Golf in the state of Texas. They loved him, and he loved teaching juniors. He would go out of his way to teach. He'd spend thousands of dollars of his own money buying kids clubs that didn't have good clubs and stuff. But that's why, because Dick loved to teach. Look at Craig. Craig was a pro at Oak Hill and Country Club in Rochester, New York for 42 effing years. I wouldn't spend 42 days in Rochester, New York. Have you ever been there? Shit, there's nothing there that would keep you there. And I said to Craig, "How'd you stay there so long?" And you'll love this. He goes, "I did have 8 majors." And in the old days, I owned all the concessions. I said, "I know you used to put us to work in the tents and not pay us so you could make all the money you were making." But these are people that love to do what they do. I love to teach. This is what I found out late in my life. This is what I was born to do. I was born to do what I'm doing. And I like every bit of it. Even at 80 years old, I like to teach. I mean, I like working on my game, which is not as good as it used to be, and that's irritating the hell out of me. But I still go out and I try and work on it. I've been working with a trainer, trying to get my body in better shape and stretching out. I'm going to Augusta on Saturday to play. And heck, I'm playing with the two guys I'm taking to Augusta. We're playing on tomorrow morning. And they said, "What's this?" I said, "This is a dress rehearsal to see if any of us are going to play with the shit when we get to Augusta." So I just love being around golf. Golf is our life. But you got to like it, because you're not going to get good at it if you don't like it. If you're complaining about your job at the club you work at or how much money you don't get paid, you're not going to be good at what you do. You have to love what you do. And the better you get at it, the rewards are amazing. The rewards that we get on where we get to work, the people we get to work with. Think of the game of golf. Think of all the people, all you guys that are on this Zoom right now. Think of all the influential people you've met in your life because of the game of golf. Whether it be members at your club, whether you were traveling somewhere and you met someone and you did someone, and all you got to do is be a professional. Be professional 100% of the time. That doesn't mean what the PGA manual at the PGM schools tell you to do. We've got a very good PGM school here in UNLV, and I do a lot of stuff with those kids, and I talk to them every year. And the people that run it, they hate me because they know what I'm going to do at the end of it. I'll take the manual like this, and I'll say, "You see this manual right here? As soon as you graduate, throw the sumbitch in the trash, because you're never going to use the one thing that's on those pages that's going to help you become any better." Because that's just a general way of doing things. You put your own turn on it. You put your own spin on it. You get better at what you forget what that paper says to do. And people say to me, "You've been a golf pro for almost 60 years. You've never been a member of the PGA." And I said, "No, I haven't." And they said, "Why?" I said, "Because I couldn't pass the test, because I'm no good at taking a test." I mean, my brother Dickie made me go to business school way a zillion years ago when I first went to Houston. And so me being the rebel that I am, in those days you had questions about cart maintenance and accounting, and you guys all know, you all had to do it. So the questions came to my accountant. I wrote my accountant's name and phone number across the paper. I said, "I don't do accounting. I hire a professional to do it." Came to the cart maintenance. I put my cart man down, his phone number. I said, "No, I have a cart man who's really good at this. He does this. I don't take care of the cart." Well, of course, I failed the test. I got home and my brother Dick says to me, "You're such an asshole. Why did you do that?" I said, "Because you know me, I can't take a test. I got every letter in the world. I can't. The only time I can pay 100% attention is when I teach. All the other time I'm out in space somewhere. So taking a written test to me was never a job." So I said, "The hell with this. I can't do this. I'm just going to have to do this on my own." So that's my story.
I've got a few things I can, but Jackson, have we got many questions for Butch?
Yeah, let's do a couple questions.
I've got two I can fire your way. What professionals from your childhood, other than your father, had the biggest influence on your teaching and coaching?
John Jacobs, for sure. The great Englishman who was phenomenal. To this day, I think he's probably written the best instructional book there is to read. It wrote way back in the 70s. Practical Golf, it's called. I make everybody who comes to work for me read it. They take mine. They can see all the highlighting I've put in it. I'll tell you how much it meant to me. When he passed away, I flew all the way over to London to speak in Winchester Cathedral at his memorial, and I wouldn't miss it. And I told the people, I said, if you hadn't invited me, I was coming anyway. So he and my dad, I learned the most from.
Awesome.
Second question: what things would you consider to be the most important when developing elite high school and college players?
I would say teaching them how to play golf instead of worrying about how far they hit it. Teaching them how to put a number in that little box on the scorecard, because that's the only thing that counts. They don't care whether you drove up in a new Denali and you got a $600 Scotty Cameron putter. I don't really give a shit. Let's see, he hits the balls. So teach them how to play golf. Teach them how to shoot scores. That's the whole key. Learn that high school players, and even when you get to college, when you're first in college, you got to learn how to shoot scores. Scores are the barometer on how well you play. We can BS ourselves and say, "Well, I really played good today. I know I shot 75. No, you didn't. If you really played good, you wouldn't have shot 75. You know, it's like my dad used to say, when I was playing really well, and I'd be on the tour, and I'd come and I wasn't playing so good, and hit me on, and I'd hit a shot and said, "Oh yeah, I know what I did wrong." And then he goes, "If you know what you did wrong, why the hell did you do it?" That's how simple the old timers made it. But with these young kids, make them shoot scores and make them hit shots. I used to take my junior golfers, and one day they had to play with all odd number clubs. The next day they had to play with all even number clubs. Then I might even make it go down to 7 clubs. And I wanted to see what kind of score you could shoot for 9 holes without a full set of clubs, because then you've got to hit golf shots, and you got to show me that you understand how to maneuver your way around a hole, to get around a hole, get around 9 holes without just bombing your driver out there 320 yards and wedging it on the green. Learn how to play golf. That's when you find out the guys that are really good. We had a barometer. My dad had it, and my brothers and I have all had it. When parents will bring their 15, 16-year-old kids to us and talk about how good he is. And my first question would be, well, young man, what do you shoot at your home course? Well, I shoot around 70, 71, 72. I said, that's not going to get it. I said, if you're not shooting 6, 7, 8 under every time you play on your home course, you're not going to beat anybody. And they look at me like they're crazy. I said, what do you mean? I said, you know what? Every club to hit on every shot. You know how every putt breaks. You know how to play every single hole. You know everything about the characteristics. Oh, you got to be shooting 5, 6, 7, 8 under every time you play if you're a good player. Because when you go to another course, you don't know any of that. So that's why I say it's important to make them go shoot scores. Send them out there. Let's see who can shoot the lowest today. It may not be popular because all they want to do is get the new driver and hit it 300 yards, or tell you, well, my dad said I don't have to do that. Well, tell your dad to come here. I'll tell him to F off too. So you can both leave at the same time. As I told you, I got no filter, guys.
No, we know. We love it. We love it. Jackson, any more questions?
No, I don't think so.
Butch, can I ask you one question?
Sure. You guys ask me anything you want.
You when we started, you talked about your self-confidence and belief in you. Obviously I've taught some guys playing for a living. How did you handle, this is probably a selfish question, but how did you handle getting fired and not letting that affect your self-confidence? I'm just being honest. I've had a problem with that a couple times where it started. Maybe I was like, well, shit, am I not as good as I thought I was? How did you handle that? If you don't mind me asking.
I don't think you have to look at it that way. I think the thing about it is, we're dealing with tour players. You're eventually going to get fired. Nobody lasts forever. Because sometimes the message gets stale. Like I tell people coming to my golf school, I said, look, the greatest thing you can do right now, every time you hit a bad shot, just blame me, because I took 5 guys at number 1 in the world and they all fired me. So you're not going to bother me at all if you want to say something bad about me. But it's just part of the business. You can't let it get to you. Yes, it hurts because you put your time and effort. People don't realize this, and JP, you realize this because you do what I used to do now. You travel to a lot of tournaments. You're away from your family for a lot of times. You miss a lot of stuff when your kids are younger and stuff. So it's not an easy job. And when we do get let go by someone, it hurts because and it depends on how the person does it. If they do it in a very nice way and said, I really enjoyed working with you, I think I'd like to hear something a different way, I always say, well, that's fine. Tell me who you're going to. If you want, I'll send them all the tape I have of what you were doing and stuff. And most of the times when that happens, the guy will say, no, I'd rather not see it. Well, if it was me, I'd want to see what went on when this guy.
Agree.
You can't take it personally, but we do. And, I have stayed friends with all the guys that fired me, Tiger included. I get along great with all the guys I've worked with, all the guys that I've spent time with. I love seeing them. I love talking with them. I love being around them. I don't take it as a slight to me. I just take it, and maybe they thought they learned everything they could learn from me, and they wanted to go learn from someone else. And my dad taught us that. He had a young Australian, I can't think of his name. He was young on the tour at the time. Dad was helping. And 5 weeks in a row, he never finished out of the top 10. And 6 weeks gone by, he's with another teacher. And I said to my dad, I said, can you believe this guy, after what you did for him, he went to someone else? He goes, well, maybe he thought that I taught him everything that he could learn, and he wanted to hear it some other way. He says, you can't take it personally. So I learned at a young age, watching it through my father, although I got to tell you, I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy when someone cans you, because you feel like you failed.
Right.
You can't feel that way if you go back and look at the record you had with them. I think the thing that, in myself, that I'm the most proud of in all my 35 or 40 years working with the best players in the world. No one came to me and when they left, they were all better off than when they showed up. And I'm very proud of that. I didn't have anybody come to me and be worse when they left. Everybody that left when they went on to someone else was better than when they showed up. And that's all I can do. And that's all you can do. You can give them all the information, all the help we do. One of the secrets to dealing with tour players, and Justin, you've learned this very well because you've been around me so much, is you got to know when to kick them in the butt. You got to know when to make them laugh. You got to know when to give a hug. You got to know when to back off. You got to know when to jump in there and say, this isn't right. And you got to know when to shut up. And you learn that the more you do it. And everyone you teach is different. Every one of those personalities is different. I'm very good at challenging my guys. If I want them to do something and they're having a hard time doing it, I say, well, we need to do this, but I don't think you can probably get that. So let's move on. We'll move on to something else. What do you mean I can't get it? I said, well, I'm not sure you can do that. Well, show me what you want me to do. I used to do that to Tiger Woods all the time. Just telling him he couldn't do something. All of a sudden, a great story. We were playing a match play at La Costa in Carlsbad. And he was on the practice tee, and we were trying to hit high fades with 3 irons, and he wasn't hitting them. He was hitting pulls, and he wasn't getting it. A little quick from the top. He just wasn't getting it. And it's a real shitty range there. It's only like 250, 40 yards long. And at the end of the range, there's a little opening where the cart comes out to bring the ball. So the cart was coming out. So I took 5 balls. I put $100 bill underneath the 5 balls. So I got $100. Says you can't hit a high fade with that 3 iron into that opening down there at about 230. Guess where the first ball went? Right through that goddamn opening. All I had to do was challenge him and tell him he couldn't do it, and he did. Of course, then he won the tournament. So it was the best 100 I ever spent.
It paid you back.
But don't take it personal. You will, but you got to let it go, and you got to realize you did all you could do for the person. I can honestly tell you, and when you think of someone that had a chance to win a big tournament and they play a bad round on Sunday, I was so hard on myself. I'd say, did I miss something? What did I miss this week? He played so well the first 3 rounds and then didn't handle the pressure or something the last round. What did I miss? Did I go back over everything we did that week? So I'm my own worst critic. I mean, I'm hard on myself because I think about, gosh, I wish that I had said this that way or that way. But you can't take it personally, even though I know it hurts. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. It doesn't matter who we are. I've been fired by the best of them.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem. Believe me, I've been there.
No, it is. It's you trying to get better at it. But,
you go home at night and you have a drink and you're like, oh, damn, what just happened? You know what? Mm-hmm. We were doing so well together, and a lot of times the guys aren't honest. They won't tell you why. They give you some bullshit answer, and that's not true. But it just is what it is. We just got to live with it. Life throws us all kinds of curveballs, and the older we get, the better we get at dealing with them, and the more we fail, the better we get at succeeding. And it's something I tell people I teach all the time. Look, you're going to regress a little before you get better. I mean, think of Tiger Woods, and he wins the Masters in '97, broke the record. The end of '97, we're looking at the films, and the club was a little across the line, and we were going to fix it. And he wanted to change it. And the club face angle was a little shut. And I said, yeah, that's going to take a while. So let's do it a little at a time. No, I want to do it all right now. I said, well, Tig, you're going to have to play this year. You know what he won? How many tournaments he won in 1998? One tournament in '98 because he spent the whole year changing his swing. Then came '99. 2000, 2001, 2002. No one in the world could beat him.
Touched him.
We get a guy at the club who comes and takes an hour lesson and he doesn't go play any good. He throws out the whole system. Well, I use that as an example all the time. I say, here's the greatest player ever. It took him a year to feel comfortable with what he's doing. And you can't break 90 anyway. You're not happy with one lesson, so maybe you ought to go see somebody else. I don't know. Hell, golf's hard. It's not easy. It's a hard thing.
Yeah. Awesome.
Ask me anything you want, guys. I'm cool with this. This is a lot of fun. Thank you, JP, for asking me to do this.
Guys, this was awesome. Thank you so much.
What do you guys got up there?
Anything else, Jackson?
Anything, Wayne? What do you got up there? You're sitting there all quiet up there in the right-hand box. I see you up there, Wayne.
I think that Tiger stuff is very, very cool. But to be honest with you, I mean, understanding the difficulty of the game and helping, and I think for younger teachers, how do you feel about letting them, tell those stories, the likes of those stories you've shared with us tonight? Because if they're 25, 26 and they're only just really starting teaching and they've done their PGA and things like that, that's a very difficult time, I think, for a teacher, because they're not, to some degree, they're not taking that seriously. It's harder for them to be able to share things like that you've done, and you've lived it, you've seen it, you've been successful. For those younger teachers, do you feel like they should just go ahead and share those stories? And I think from my side, the answer would probably be yes. I've been working for Brian Harmon for 4 years, and we're trying to help his alignment for 4 years, and I've been trying to get him to commit to being a bit more systematic in his practice for 4 years, and then lo and behold, he wins an Open Championship, and it's like, well, all the things. And
I meant to talk to you about that. How did you get him to make all those putts to beat my man Tommy Fleetwood? I never asked you about that.
Well, we just made sure those greens were nice and flat, and it was raining.
He held everything he looked at. Fleetwood played great, but he wasn't going to beat Brian. Leading again today down in the Bahamas. He shot
right
today, yeah. And what a great kid.
And it's funny, that's I'll ask you more about this offline, but he's when they do what he has done, they change a little bit. They've got a lot more on their plate. They've got a lot more to do. They've got a lot more. They've obviously got a lot more confidence, and managing that is a part of the next part of my journey that you'll help me with in the future. But for those younger teachers, how do you feel about how should they be able to communicate that message of, okay, if you're asking me to make a big swing change, do you think it's okay for them to lean on those of us who've done this?
Sure. And first of all, when you're asking someone to make that change, you have to explain to them why you're having them do that. You have to show it to them on the film that you've taken of them, because I can tell you what you're doing, but if they don't see it, they don't understand it. You can show the guy what he's doing wrong. You can explain to him how we're going to fix it. And I'll make him make practice swings with a new movement. I always film practice swings, because with no ball, you can't believe how good a guy can make a swing. I don't know what the hell happens when we put the ball down there. But so if I make a change with a guy, I believe, and this for too, because I made Tiger do this a long time, slow motion swings, hitting balls in slow motion, because you can physically allow your body to do the things that you have to do. And you film those, and then you show them to him. You see, this is what I'm talking about. See how that shaft angle is not this steep over the top, and how your right shoulder's back and the shaft laid down when you did it in a slow motion. And then you just have them start hitting balls like that. And then you have to explain to them, look, you're going to regress a little before you go forward, because your old habits are going to always come back in there. The best players in the world, and this from the guys you teach, their old habits crawl back in there without them knowing it. And we got to go back and revisit those. Well, the same thing teaching a high handicapper. But you really have to be good at explaining to him why he needs to do this. And you have to show it to him on the film. You have to show him with the slow motion swings that he can do it. I think one of the greatest videos you ever sent me was when Clarkie was at the place, and you had about 4 boxes stacked up, and they're on angles and on the ground. And because I always like to put a box on the ground and make him swing. You must have 6 boxes surrounding him, and I know you guys set that up just to stick it up my rear end, and I loved every minute of it. It was awesome. As soon as you sent it to me, I was on the phone calling you guys.
Yeah, he's the best.
But you have to explain to them you're going to regress a little, and then all of a sudden everything will kick in. So just don't give up on it. And any of you want to use the Tiger Woods story, use it, because it's a fact. I mean, it took a whole year. He only won once.
Perfect.
Awesome. Great stuff. Butch, thanks so much for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime, guys.
Thank you very much.
Next time, have your people send in a lot of questions. I love hearing what you guys have to say. I like hearing the questions that people have, because that's how I can understand what's going on in the game.
Well, I think, Butch, with your blessing, we might reach out to those guys and really try and assimilate one, which is just a proper Q&A with you on all of their questions.
It'd be my pleasure.
I'm 47. These people coming up behind are 27, and we're at a point where we want to try and connect with them, and they've probably got some better ideas than us, but they want to learn from guys like you who've you're the best in the world at what you do, and you're like my golfing father. So I appreciate everything you've ever done for me.
I mean, you and I have been together for a long time. We've had the opportunity to see a lot, and people ask me all the time, you'll get a kick out of this, and I'll leave you with this one. People say to me, Mr. Harmon, how do you choose who you want to work with? And I said, I don't really choose anybody. I've never solicited anybody. They all pick me and they come. And they say, well, has there ever been anybody you've turned down? I said, yeah, there's been a few people that if they're not a real good guy, I don't want to work with them. At this point in time, I'm not going to work with anybody I don't want to be around. They said, would you mind telling us who it was? I said, I won't tell you his name, but his initials were Patrick Reed. The reaction was just like you guys. It takes a second, and then all of a sudden it kicks in.
That's a great one to wrap it up there.
You can use that one. It's a good one. I'm not going to tell you his name, but his initials are whatever. Guys, thank you. It's been a pleasure. I know a few of you on here. JP, anytime. Anytime you need me, just call me. I'm happy to do it.
Perfect.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Butch.
My pleasure, gang. Have a great evening.
I hope you enjoyed this edition of The Tour Coach and this conversation that we brought to you about playing, learning, and teaching the game of golf. We'll be back next week with another edition of The Tour Coach. In between now and next week, make sure you follow us on our social channels. You can always find me at The Dew Sweeper on Instagram, or go to our YouTube page where you'll see a scene and a video from my teachings daily on our YouTube channel. You can find that by looking up Tony Ruggiero and the Dew Sweepers on YouTube. Until then, make sure you follow and check out Everything Tour Coach and all our sponsors, Shrixon Cleveland Golf, Bushnell, Vineyard Vines, and Buick GMC. I'll be back next week to help all of us appreciate, learn, and enjoy the game of golf. Hi, this is Tony Ruggiero. And look, recently, several teachers I know and several players have had some scares with skin cancer. In fact, I recently went and saw a dermatologist here in town, and I had a couple things frozen off, eyelid, my face, my earlobe, and not getting any younger. And I know it's getting to that time of the season where it's cooler, but look, being in the sun is a real deal, and I've not been very good, to be totally honest, my whole career at using it at all, because I didn't like how greasy it was, how hard it was to get off your hands, how it clogged up my pores. And then I found this sunscreen, Visor Skincare. It's clear, it goes on, it doesn't dry you out, it isn't greasy, it's like you didn't put anything on it. By far, it's the best sunscreen I've ever used. Without a doubt, is the easiest to use. And we've got a discount code for all of you. All you have to do is go to visorskincare.com, is use our code word DewSweeper. visorskincare.com, code word DewSweeper.